A very good morning to all of you. After talking about Deepesh Chakraborty's essay, Subaltern Studies, Retrospective and Reminiscences, or Retrospection and Reminiscences, we should go ahead with one more essay which is related to Subaltern Studies by Vivek Chiber. Vivek Chiber or Chiber, actually, I'm sorry for the pronunciation, is an American academic social theorist, editor, and professor of sociology at New York University. And he has widely published on development, social theory, and politics. He is the author of two books, Post-Colonial Theory and The Spectre of Capital, and Locked in Place, State Building and Late Industrialization in India, which was published in the year 2003, and the earlier book was published. The book which I mentioned earlier was published in the year 2013. So these are his two important books. He moved to the United States in the year 1980. He was born in India actually in the year 1965, and he moved to the US at the age of 15, and he lived there since then. He completed his BA in political science in the year 1987 at Northwestern University. In 1999, he finished his PhD in sociology at the University of Wisconsin, and his dissertation, PhD thesis, we call, was supervised by Eric Olin Wright. He began as an assistant professor at New York University in the year 1999, where he is now a full professor. His first book, Locked in Place, is an attempt to answer why some countries were able to build developmental states in the decades after World War II, while others, like India, could not. So he gives an example of India and South Korea. Korea was successful in building developmental states, whereas India could not. He talks about the reasons of this particular success and failure in this book. In 2006, he published on the decline of class analysis in South Asian studies in a journal named Critical Asian Studies. So this article by Chibe examined the sociological conditions for the decline of class analysis and its displacement by post-colonial theory in the South Asian context. Further, in the preface to his second book, the book that we refer to, Post-Colonial Theory and the Spectre of Capital, Chiber explains that once he examined the conditions that gave rise to post-colonial theory, he felt that he also had to examine its core arguments. So this particular book focuses on one particular strand of theorizing, that is subaltern studies collective. So it talks about, it is a kind of critique of subaltern studies collective. So for him, subaltern studies is a representative of the key sociological and historical arguments in post-colonial studies. It represents the key argument, you can say. Now, what is his basic argument in the book? He thinks that even though post-colonial theory advertises itself as a critique of Orientalism and Eurocentrism, In fact, the theory ends up resurrecting them. The theory itself is a kind of resurrection of Orientalism and Eurocentrism. It is just like supporting the views, Orientalist and Eurocentric views. And he bases this claim, on an examination of the subalternists' historical socialism. He studies Ranjit Guha and other contributors. And he also studies their theoretical arguments. We refer to the book Postcolonial Theory and the Spectre of Capital. This book touched off a very intense and wide-ranging debate between Chibert and members of the Subaltern Studies Collective, and even other intellectuals. There was a kind of debate between these people. Most prominently, Partha Chatterjee, you are familiar with Partha Chatterjee and Gayatri Spivak, both criticized Chibe for his representation of the subalternists' work and post-colonial theory more generally, for generalization. So they criticized Chibe for it. And Chibe responded in turn, denied that he had misrepresented his interlocutors, means these subalternists' work, and launching a counter-attack episode. This essay that you're going to study, revisiting subaltern studies, is a kind of counter-attack on Partha Chatterjee and other critics. Yes, there was a debate between the Partha Chatterjee and Gayatri Spivak and Chipe, and whatever outcome came out of it, whatever outcome is there, that is collected and published by Verso Books in the year 2016. Okay, the debate on postcolonial theory and the spectrum of capital. That's the title of this debate, and it is available online. In the spring of 2017, Chiber and Robert Brenner launched as well as assumed the editorial duties for the journal named Catalyst, a journal of theory and strategy. So, what we understand through this particular introduction to Vivek Chiber is that his essay, Revisiting Subaltern Studies, is a kind of counter attack, an answer to Partha Chatterjee.